Hello everyone and welcome to another TeamBN stream. We're back with another world record analysis. Battle Network 6 again, but this time we're going to take a look at the Falzar version because Last recently set a new best time for Falzar. And while there are some similarities between Falzar and Gregar, there's some important differences, especially with the crosses that you'll see in the run, which requires some different strategies and a lot more beast out compared to Gregar. And on commentary, we have Last, Risch, and Erothaur. So, Last, how you doing?
Doing great. I'm really excited to get an opportunity to talk about Falzar and showcase some of the interesting differences.
Yeah. And we've got Risch. How you doing, Risch?
Hello everyone. Yep, I'm also here. I am doing alright. Just got myself some pancakes for this morning and ready to discuss some BN6. As we mentioned, we've already talked a little bit about Gregar, which is my area of expertise, but I have watched a number of Falzar runs, and the Falzar combat is significantly trickier and therefore probably a little more engaging to talk about at times, so should be interesting.
Alright. Enjoy your pancakes. And we also have Erothaur, one of the earlier Battle Network 6 speedrunners. How you doing, Erothaur?
Hello. I'm doing pretty well. I was one of the earlier runners for Falzar. I don't remember if I was the first one to do a run. But I remember that I had the record in it for a while, and then eventually some other people started playing the the bird version. Especially Jamaica's driven the time down a lot, and then Last kind of gained interest, and this run happened. I'm excited to watch this. I saw part of it and streamed it live. But...
As did I.
It's interesting. Falzar kind of got neglected for a while because there was so much focus on Gregar, but eventually wanted to pick it up because it was like, I think Doyson just had it at like 240 for years until someone really started to look into it. Falzar was slower, and it's actually, especially with a good luck and a good run, the difference is smaller than we used to think it was.
I was just gonna say, the current Gregar world record is a 2:10:23, if I'm not mistaken, and that is also held by Last. And I know Last has some thoughts on exactly what the time difference between a good Gregar run and a good Falzar run should be. Do you want to talk about that briefly right now?
Sure. So I'll caveat this by saying this run that we're about to see is probably one of the first, like, modern, in quotes, Falzar runs where there aren't routing errors to our knowledge and all the movement is good and things like that. And I definitely make mistakes in fights and could have done things faster, but it like has all the strats, in quotes. It's definitely improvable upon. And if you were to take this run and make fewer mistakes, execute the fights properly, I honestly think you could get Falzar to be within 2 or 3 minutes of a Gregar run of a similar caliber, I think.
It's crazy. Alright, well, I think we've talked enough, so if you're ready, let's see. Last, how about you do the countdown?
Sure. 3, 2, 1, go.
Alright, so I've started the video now. I'm gonna wait on starting the timer briefly until Last VOD, I should say, actually starts the run.
The previous last.
Correct. Oh, I need to not have YouTube selected real quick so I don't jump ahead in the video. I started the timer a bit earlier, but that's fine.
Close enough. It includes the discussion time.
We're gonna say, okay, you can't see it. Previous last as we call them, is drinking water.
Stay hydrated.
And there we go.
Go.
17 seconds.
There we go.
Oh, funny.
And the video is buffering. Hold on. It's had plenty of time to download. I don't know what YouTube's doing. Technical difficulties, chat. Give me one moment. Going back to GBA. All right. Hopefully this time it actually plays. Oh, I did the thing. Wasn't supposed to do the thing.
Oh,
Hold on.
We're almost there.
I apologize, chat.
it's okay. We'll edit this out. No one will ever know.
All right.
And
You
we're
know what? The
going.
timer's only a little behind now. A little late this time. We're good. Okay. So the run has begun. We're going through the standard tutorial. My favorite part of the run.
Too much to talk about at the very beginning here, because the tutorial is going to be effectively exactly the same as what you would see in the Gregor side of things. The early game in general is almost exactly identical. In fact, up through Diveman, the only real differences between Falzar and Gregor is the secondary codes that you'll get on some chips. For example, Mach-Gun T is the Gregor chip, and I don't even remember what it is. It's probably like K or something like that for Falzar if you don't get the A code. And similarly, Train Arrow, we still have A available, but the secondary code is different. The real big difference, though, is the strategic decisions we're going to make. Because in Gregor, we're just going to heat cross through everything. Falzar, we have to make a couple of different decisions, and we'll get to see the sorts of choices that leads to as we make our way through here.
There is one very important difference between Gregor and Falzar, though. Falzar has the wrong colors.
Argue that Falzar has the right colors.
Have you
Falzar
seen
has a
the
pink
whale?
whale.
Yeah, it's actually really jarring to switch between the games regularly
Oh my
because
God,
the
it just-
colors will like pop out at you differently.
It just feels wrong. Yeah. I'll be like running around and I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm like, why do I not? Oh, it's because the colors are different.
There's
Also, I
also-
apologize for the cursor on screen. That's on my VOD end.
Really? Yeah. World record, by the way.
Chat couldn't hear me that time, but I swear to God, it's not me. I promise.
Alright.
I'm bad with technology, but not that bad.
The cursor's a different size. That's the giveaway. Yeah.
I think my chat reminded me of it shortly here.
Oh,
So
there it's gone.
There we go.
We did it, chat, with the power of old technology. Not even current technology. This is weak old technology.
Oh, that's a rough encounter.
Yeah, so that's actually not the best first encounter you could get. I assume you got the reflected ones. And he did
No.
draw to Vulcan, so it's actually not that much worse. It's just like the extra time it took for one more virus to load in.
He could have also done that fight like ever so slightly faster if he went for a double delete instead of the second counter hit. The only difference would have resulted in not having full synchro here, which actually would not have made any difference on this particular fight. Getting that.
So here we pick up a Mach-Gun 1A, and I'm actually resetting in Central Area 2 for this Mach-Gun 1A. It's about a 42% chance that you get one, which is remarkably similar to Train Arrow later on, but I'm actually resetting for it. I was testing out a new strat that Jermeek had suggested to me of regging Mach-Gun for some of the mid-game bosses. We'll get to see that put to use later.
That's interesting.
That sounds pretty good in Falzar, actually.
If
I
only,
still have no idea if it's good or not.
if
Caveat.
only- yeah.
The
If
world
only we
record does
could
it,
do that
must be good.
Yeah,
earlier.
Yeah, if we could reg Mach-Gun for like Blast Man, that would be fantastic.
It'd be hilarious.
Because then we have the perfect draw and we're only relying on drawing the counter hit card. Chip. There we go. That's the word.
Card chip from Star Network.
My brain is thinking about Star Force in advance for tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. For those of you watching live, tomorrow on their respective channels, there will be a Star Force 3 race with a bunch of people.
And I can't help but like watch the timer during this part of the run and like closely analyze exactly how good the run is doing prior to Blastman. And it's even funnier because of the discussion we were having on last channel yesterday about splits and what make or like ways to do your reset strategy.
Yeah, that draw was a little unfortunate for the old stove, so we're definitely behind where you'd like to be at this point. But this is Falzar, it's a little less optimized, and I've gotten my mock gun. Definitely not going to reset anything too aggressively at this point.
Yeah, I think at this point, like, realistically in Gregor, if you want a world record, you can reset for like a 1045, 1040 or lower Blastman. But Falzar is, as you said, way less optimized. This early part of the run should be 100% identical to Gregor. However, the only difference is you might want extra chips. So you might take fights that you would consider running away from in Gregor.
Yeah, that will slow you down some, but not terribly much. I would argue that here I'm mandating that I get the mock gun, which would cause you to do some resets, and I think a second, maybe even third reflectors would be good enough that you would want to take them. So usually I'm going to do the fight in Robo Control 1, which we'll be getting to here soon. And it's to the point where I've even considered doing the fight if you get in on the way to sneak runs just after Blastman. Yeah, to answer chat, because we don't have Heat Cross, we're going to be relying a lot more on Beast Out. And Beast Out, you can charge null code or null element chips to do a bunch of damage. So Reflector, A code, flows very nicely with our folder and is chargeable. So that makes it extra good for Falzar.
Yeah, normally we will have about 5 A-coded chips because we almost always have at least one Reflector 1A, like guaranteed. Especially if you're resetting for good runs, like you'll basically require that you have a Reflector 1A. So you have 5 chips normally that are A-coded, null element, and the more of those you have, the better your folder flows. So you can take more chips per turn, which means you're dealing more damage with Beast Out later on. Very nicely executed there.
On the second pass through Central Area, to answer chat, on every subsequent visit to Central Area, we actually sneak run there, so it would cost a very large amount of time to try to get another machine gun.
Also, that fight was so beautifully executed, and I'm so sad that you didn't get rewarded for it.
Such is RNG, but it was a fun one.
It was so perfect. Like, that wasn't even how I would have... I just never would have thought to do it that way specifically.
Yeah, it's a very good fight.
There's a lot of muscle memory and just snap decision making that goes into all Battle Network speedruns. I'm sure any of the runners from any game would be able to tell you, oh yeah, I have run around in an area for an hour just grinding out the virus battles to get into my head how to do these fights properly. And on the one hand, that's very applicable here, switching from Gregor to Falzar, because the fights are the same in the early game, and it became a huge problem for me later on. Like when we get to Greentown, just the day before I got this world record, actually, I spent 2 hours just running through Greentown 1 and 2 and getting 2 fights in Greentown 1 and 1 fight in Greentown 2 over and over and over again to try and figure out how you're supposed to do the fights with F-Beast and copy damage. It's very different and very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we'll talk a bit more about those differences once they actually start to come up. This folder edit is identical to what you would see in A Gregar run, you remove a cannon so that you open a slot in your top 4 due to a bug in the folder shuffling algorithm that lets the top 4 chips be drawn more likely or more frequently at the start of a fight. And so you then replace that cannon with a Mach Gun 1A, which is the chip you ideally want to be drawing here, and then adds and regs the Reflector 1A, and then adds the Cannon B back in because it's still a decent chip, and you only have 2 chips to add.
I was a tiny bit slow on that edit because I was debating putting Fire Hit 1D in, actually. I decided against it.
Ah, yes, my favorite draw. Mini bombs. So while this fight wasn't the fastest, it certainly wasn't the slowest. Also, a minor little thing, I think I even pointed it out to Last in chat during this run. Standing in the bottom row, because Blastman will not move into your row while he's not attacking, if you stand in the bottom row, there are only 5 possible places for him to move. 3 of those are in the middle, which is where he wants him for Mach Guns. So it's actually better. It's as weird as it feels compared to how you're normally playing the fight. It's better to stand at the bottom row if you're trying to hit Mach Gun for the full hit. Increases your chance of him moving into it from a what is it? 4 to
50-50 on the first, and then 60% on the second, or subsequent to a better odds than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you move down from the beginning, it's actually just a 75% immediately. Every move.
Oh, that's true.
And then we buy, as we said, here's the sneak runs that we buy. Last, being the true champion he is, knows to always do them on a turn frame.
Not sure how consistent I am at that.
Unless you don't get a random on the way to buy it.
Yes, yeah. Then you don't want to risk it.
Jameek in Old World Records actually skipped this reg up and the one that you get later on in 6-2 comp in favor of picking up a reg up 3 in the Judge tree. But I elected to pick them up here instead of later on so we can reg copy damage earlier, and also since I'm doing the Mach Gun strats, we do need to pick them up now. So for a while there was a debate whether or not it was worth delaying the copy damage to skip those 2 reg ups, because especially the 6-2 takes a little while to get. But now that we're doing Mach Gun, your hand is forced.
Anyone else hear pancakes right now? I heard.
The usefulness of copy damage isn't necessarily different between versions, but it only becomes really necessary in like Greentown, the Judge Tree, and then the Skytown gauntlets. Gregar has to reg it, it is pretty much forced to reg it a little earlier so that you have copy damage for the cattle fights, because otherwise they're awful and horrible. But Falzar could, in theory, delay it. And I know Jameek was doing that for a little while, and it seems better for Falzar, but if you want to reg Mach Gun, you definitely need to know. Mach Gun is 1 more than copy damage, I think.
Mm-hmm. Because we're doing the Mach Gun strats, we'll actually push our Diveman edit back a little bit because we need to get the reg up out of the trash can before we can do it. Our first fixed fight. We've got Mach Gun, would be a great draw. Get a little unlucky.
This was not a great draw.
I was spooky with that
Buster Up makes it okay.
One of the worst possible draws, right? Just
It's-
air shot.
It's
Yeah,
one of the
it-
first possible draws where you actually got another chip. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Buster Up actually does save having to open the custom screen.
Mm-hmm.
Erothaur, how much do you remember of Falzar strats back from when it was like a 10 or a 240 or something like that time?
There were strats.
Everything, because they hadn't changed. Falzar didn't really have strats per se. It's just like I did what Gregor did, and then I just did fights. However,
Did
and
you?
there was a lot of thought that I put into routing Falzar, but I never actually tested how fast any of it was.
Oh, sure.
So all of my runs were kind of like this weird amalgamation of strats that may or may not even be good. And then I like never got a good time in the game because I didn't care, to be honest.
One specific question. Did you ever pick up Black Bomb?
I
And
don't think I ever picked up Black Bomb.
Okay.
Split?
I
Maybe
tested
in
it
like the
once.
very earliest of runs.
I'd rather pick up Muramasa at that point if we're just going.
Yeah.
No, my argument for picking up Black Bomb is it is the fastest chip to draw in a number of Sky Gauntlet fights because you throw it at a fire virus.
Yes.
So I have ever tested that. And
It is, however, really bad in every other fight.
bad. I mean, it's a 100 damage mini bomb that sits around not doing anything if you miss. And you can't charge it.
I was about to
Turn
say,
it
and
on.
you can't charge it. And
It's really good in that one Pavilion
off
4
code.
fight as well, with the candle.
Mhm.
You copy damage Black Bomb and it kills the whole
Yep.
fight.
It's good against Blastman also.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna
Is
say
it?
Blast DX with White Capsule.
it's really well. He
This-
just counter hits himself. You don't even need the white capsule.
Yeah,
But doesn't the
that's like 350.
make it do
damage.
extra damage?
The White Capsule? No.
If you landed on him.
If
it
you
does.
landed it on him, yes. But
Yeah.
it's really. Oh, I guess you could guarantee that.
The White
'cause he-
Capsule
he's gonna
shouldn't
come
make
to
it
the
do any
front.
extra damage.
It's hilarious.
Because
This-
the impact will counter hit, so then the explosion will hit him anyway. And the counter hit doesn't apply to the Black Bomb because you've already thrown it.
Mm.
So that's how
So
you
it's like
do the
350.
air shot draw for bathroom splits, get one charge shot, then hit with the air shot and get the other charge shot. Also, I don't know why I drew air shot as my only chip on all of these fights, but it's kind of annoying.
Your fixed encounters have been pretty not great.
Speaking from experience,
Damn,
a
yeah,
7-minute jack-in at bathroom splits as like we used to split on bathroom splits. So right when you jack into the internet, there, 7 minutes is like upsetting from my previous experience.
Yeah.
Like he had
back
basically
when we were
everything go
getting
wrong.
like mid to low 220s, I think like total timer 1748 was my PB split.
Yeah,
Um,
and that was
like-
before you were even getting sub 11 blast.
yeah, and that was with like 11-15 blast mans and stuff. So
It's like the 7-minute usually means absolutely everything went wrong in that split, and there are only 3 things of RNG that can go wrong. Last got the random encounter. Last got a poor icebox fight, and got a poor what's it called fight? There's a word for it. Bathroom splits fight.
Bathroom
there we go.
splits, yeah.
ooh, and you
But-
got the train arrow.
Oh, I remember this run now.
Yes, so we get the train arrow F. It's the worst code, but that's because I got a 9 rank. And that was a 1 in 3 against that encounter, so very happy to have it. So we get to be on a run.
Be a good code in Gregor.
Last was. Oh,
Unfortunately, I didn't take the cannon that I meant to.
yeah, this would have been a really fast fight if he did. But keep in mind, he got 2 counter hits actually, and he got a double delete. So his rank is incredibly high right now, even though he's waited forever. He's actually going to get an S rank. and get the A code.
Yep. So getting double train arrow on 2 random encounters in that comp is about 2% chance. And it's actually way better in Gregor than in Falzar because the train arrows are like super necessary for Heatman, whereas they're only like useful for Spoutman. But certainly not complaining. The A code is far superior for our folder flow.
A code means you like don't have to take it back out of the folder if you don't want to.
Yes. Although I have been opting to, since it isn't chargeable.
This is true. Yeah, I mean you can charge it with Aqua, I guess.
It makes a lot more sense to take it out in Falzar because at least last strats usually end up with more chips to put in anyway. More chargeable chips. Yeah. So it's like he has more things he has to get rid of. I believe you, no matter what, get 3 extra chips. Is that right? Or is it more than that?
I buy 3 recovs unless I got extra reflex. Is usually the game plan.
Yep. So normally we're able to, at least like my strats in Rhaegar, I'm able to remove all the swords, area grab, and air shots. I actually leave Train Arrow 1A or even K in because whatever, right? Most of the time you're not even going to get multiple turns, so the flow doesn't matter that much. It only affects 2 fights. Then, oh, he did the thing.
Oh, his Navi cust is weird. I forgot.
Yeah, it's orange. Not.
No, I meant the layout, but yeah, also the color though.
Layout? Isn't this the right layout? This is only 3 inputs.
No. What?
There's 2 different ways to do 3 input.
You do 2 inputs, then you do 0
I can
inputs.
hit left down way faster than down though.
Yeah, but then you. Sounds like you're just slow at mashing.
It sounds like you're just inefficient. You can overlap the left and down inputs and get it over there.
Most D-pads can't actually.
No, like to move things in the Navi cust, I think that's one of the menus where you have to hold the button for 2 frames.
Yeah.
And you can do like left down in 3 frames, but it takes 5 frames to do down down.
So at this point, I'm about 2 seconds behind my Falzar PB and 30 seconds behind the Falzar world record at Train Arrow BBS. But we've got the double Train Arrow itself, which is nice to pick up. Comparing to Gregor, this split was about 20 seconds slower than the world record Train Arrow split, but that could even be improved upon. Mm-hmm. So it's really not a very good early game outside of, well, we have Train Arrow, so that's something.
Yeah, 1040 Blastman is reasonable. That was the Blastman time he got. It's not like the best, but it's also not the worst. And then yeah, the Train Arrow BBS split was honestly kind of miserable. 2 fights that I think both of them took 2 turns.
Yep.
And every bit of RNG going absolutely poorly is not fun.
Yes. So I do the edit right here because I don't want to forget that I have picked up my memory. We have to get that memory out of the trash can in order to reg Maka.
Interesting decision there.
And my edit there was a little weird because I'm used to editing in just Train Arrow and copy damage, but this time I had 2 Train Arrows, so I had to think through a little bit how I was going to get things done. And I did that just by swapping around the air shot. So we've harped on this before, that for Battle Network 6 in particular, when you have a chip regged, the primary slots that you're going to draw more often than others are slots 1 through 4. Unless your regged chip is in those top 1 through 4, in which case it becomes 1 through 5. So that's why I now have Train Arrow A in slot 5, because my Mach Gun in slot 3 is regged. That's definitely an edit I want to come back to, and could be optimized more because of how weird it is, especially given that this is a double Train Arrow run. But that's the logic behind that edit.
Aquacross strats. The strat for Aquacross is using it when you literally can't use Beast Up. So
That's a good question in chat. Why is it the first 4 and not the first 5? So yeah, if you don't have any chips regged, it is the first 5 slots that are more likely to be drawn, and that's because of a shuffler bug. The reason it's not the top 5 and instead it's 1 through 4 is because of the regged chip. If you reg your 30th slot, for example, at the very end of the shuffle, the game removes the regged chip from wherever it is and inserts it at the top. Now, this is different than in other Battle Network games. For example, in Battle Network 5, and actually all other ones, instead of doing an insert at the top, it does a swap with the top. And so in Battle Network 5, the important slots are 2 through 5, versus in Battle Network 6, the important slots are 1 through 4. And in any case, if your regged chip is at the top, or if you don't have a regged chip, it's 1 through 5.
We've only learned this about BN6 relatively recently, too. It's kind of great. But yeah, there's actually some routes in certain games that take advantage of the top 5 slots. I know BN3 can easily take advantage of it, where you just don't reg a chip, so you're more likely to draw the top slots because you want to be drawing bar swords, for example. BN4, after you've done, like, just before you get dark chips and after you get access to lotto codes, you remove your reg chip because you don't actually care about having a regged chip. The only chips you actually care about are the really good ones. So it's like, that can be a strategy. However, in BN6, having a reg chip is like super important 90% of the time. Like, I can't think of a single time where you'd even consider removing a reg just so you could be more likely to draw their top slots.
G-Beast.
You could do that, but that's an extra folder edit, which does take time.
Maybe in Falzar for F-Beast.
We've talked about...
Actually,
go ahead. We've talked about Aquarium comps for Gregar. They're completely identical between the two. I forget though, at this point, had you already figured out the newer Aquarium Comp 3 strat?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to confirm that. So Last came up with the new strat in Aquarium 1 a little while ago at this point, where you do 3 L button strats, and what this does is it actually saves 1 L button, which saves 3 to 4 seconds. It results in getting 1 encounter check in the entire comp. So it's a 6% chance to get punished, and the other 93.75% of the time you're fine. And he didn't get punished. So the cool thing is, Last has also more recently done the same thing in Aquarium 3. So that results in getting an encounter check at the very latest possible time. So we'll see if he gets punished.
And the 3L button strat for Aquarium 1 has you get the very first possible encounter check. So we get the very first possible one and the very last possible one in the whole comps. And to be fair, it's definitely a risk, but if you remember, in Aquarium we have a 25% run rate, and so if you assume you're always going to have to run from the encounter, you're never going to like draw good chips to be able to beat it, then it takes 24 seconds to deal with an Aquarium encounter on average. And so 1 in 16 times you lose 24 seconds, and 15 in 16 times you gain 3.5 to 4 seconds. On average, that saves time. It's just occasionally you're going to get dumpstered. and I'm a big fan of doing what's on average fastest, unless I need to take risks, because I'm behind or something like that in a race. So here's the start of the new L button strat for Aquarium Comp 3. It's very tight. All of these, we have like 10 frames at most of wiggle room, and if you wiggle too much in one direction, you'll fall off across all the different L button strats. But the visual cues are all pretty reasonable. So once you've learned them, they're not too bad.
That is the only one, that second cue, that I don't really like because I always forget where it is at first.
I'm not the biggest fan either. I think I even commented to myself, that one felt early.
Oh, it
so
was
there's a chance I get punished.
It was definitely early.
It might not have been early enough to be a problem, though.
Yeah, true, true. The other thing with these strats, you will know if you get punished before you press the next L button. All you have to do is get to the next point that you press the L button, and you will know that your mistake has been fixed.
So Diveman Split contains the first actual time loss compared to Gregor and Falzar, and that's because we delay our edit until after we pick up the reg up, so the opening of the menu is slightly suboptimal. But outside of that, like 1.5 seconds, everything is still exactly the same.
And
Also,
that,
we had a pretty nice draw.
I was gonna say, that was an incredibly good draw. Seems like slightly early on the counter hit for Diveman.
Yep.
Counter hits with Maka. And very lucky to win the 50-50 that he comes forward. Very nice Diveman fight.
Yep. At this point, we are actually 3 seconds ahead of the Gregor world record at this point.
Mm-hmm. That was an incredibly good Diveman fight.
Yeah, that was really, really good.
The only thing that could have been better, because he got the actual perfect draw, in my opinion. The only thing that could have been better is if he had gotten the counter hit with the crack shot initially, and he wouldn't have even needed to use the sword.
Yep. If you have to get that draw, you have to win the 1 in 3 for Diveman to attack on the first possibility that he can, his first movement set, and then if you have that draw, you can hit him with the full damage train arrow and then bait him into the middle and finish him with the Mach gun. And you can get him on the second step, and it's just awesome.
Yep, so that'd be 60 plus 300 plus, what is it?
120.
Yeah.
And then a charge shot.
Yep, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Brings a tear to my eye.
Speaking of beautiful and bringing a tear to your eye, this is the first run I ever went around the table to talk to Mach counterclockwise instead of clockwise, and it is ever so slightly faster. Risch and I have actually been memeing at each other about forgetting to remember it.
I don't know if Erothaur's seen this yet. I've timed this now. I've actually checked my step counter. It's slightly faster to go the other way around the table to talk to Mr. Mach.
Overturning 6 years of well-understood Battle Network 6 speedrunning tech with the simple tool of a step counter to save a handful of frames.
I don't even know what possessed me to look at that specifically. Why was I practicing the split? Anyway. Now
I
is
was
the
looking
huge...
away, but that was the time where Mach was further to the left, wasn't it?
Yes. But you cut out a lot of horizontal movement.
I've always gone left around the table there.
Exactly. That's the wrong way. The slower
don't-
way, I should say.
There's no way.
There's so much horizontal movement that you're cutting out.
So this is the Spoutman scenario, and you'll notice I significantly delayed my use of a sneak run there at the start of Central 2. That's because we really need to milk these sneak runs for everything we've got. In Gregor, we just kind of do a quick lap around Central 3, busting viruses, and it only takes one sneak run. But in Spout Cross scenario, you have to play as Spoutman, walk all the way through seaside areas, some of them multiple times, and we're going to be doing swimming, which counts towards our steps.
That is probably the most annoying thing that I would hate about Falzar, is that swimming counts towards your step counter and results in you losing sneak runs.
Oh, dude, there's way more annoying things about Falzar.
Nope, only that.
So this is one thing I haven't tested. We do the fish in order 3-1-2, and that's just because that's what world record was doing when I started. I assume it's fast because we minimize our backtracking or something. And now we have to do the door fights.
For steps.
The door fights are kind of like 50-50s when you're doing them as Spoutman, because it's really dependent on where the piranha moves to. If the piranha moves out of the middle, you can usually just use the Aquaman default chip to win, like I do in this one. And if he moves into the middle, you have to route around him and find another way to pick up your full synchro again after you launch your attack.
Pretty clean fights though.
Playing through them with the Mach Gun regged is interesting as well, because you really want to be confident with getting Mach Gun counter hits, or hope that you draw like a cannon or an air shot in order to pick them up.
One thing I'm also going to make note of, sneak run just expired, nice. One of the interesting things about Spoutman versus Heatman is that you actually do those door fights during the Spout Cross scenario. As Heatman, you never have to do them until you get here during Evil Spirits. So, there is a lot of extra time loss for doing the Spout Cross scenario. It is longer, but when you look at the actual times, it's not as bad as it initially looks, because you save some of that time back during the next split by not having to worry about those door fights.
Yeah, the Spout Cross scenario is like 3 minutes longer, but the then follow-on Circus Man scenario is not quite as long. Overall, though, Spoutman scenario is worse than Heatman scenario, simply because you have to go through Seaside and fishes are faster or are slower than kettles.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the fact that we had to use 2 sneak runs here will come back to bite us later. I don't know why, but I think... Oh, I missed this fish, which is a little annoying. But I'm going the right way anyway. When you step into the whirlpool and it spins you up to the top, it seems to deposit you in a pseudo random location, and if you just AFK hold right, because that's the direction you need to move, sometimes you'll go into the bubble stream to get sucked back down. And so that's why you saw me like kind of do a little bit of weird movement at the start there, because I was pretty sure I would have run into the bubbles.
Yep. And because of how long we've been running through Seaside, both sneak runs have run up, and he got punished with a random encounter that you do have a 100% runaway chance from, so.
1 encounter check.
Yep.
You get punished.
Always. Always.
That's okay, we skipped a couple of other ones back in there, and when we were leaving Seaside 3, for example, there was an encounter check. So this is one of the primary fights that we want to have Mach unregged for. The other one was Diveman, where we put it to good use. And here, immediately you can see Spoutman's already half dead, because I was able to counter hit him into a Mach gun for full damage immediately. It's a little early on that throw for another counter hit.
Can you get the counter hit on the second one? That's weird.
Yes, he's counter hittable. It's the moment that the water comes out of the pipe, he's counter hittable on both.
Very nice baiting too, to get him to the back row.
Aquaman is a really weird fight because he's got like 3 different AI patterns that he can go through, and you have to be pretty quick to react to what he's doing in order to do the fight optimally. And also, like, you can't just draw train arrow and press A and win the way you can with He-Man. So it's definitely one that I would want to work on more. But this split went very well overall.
So, to keep track, Last is currently a minute and a half ahead of his 2:17.41 previous PB. We can't accurately tell you how ahead he is of, or how behind he is of the previous world record. I believe you hadn't updated your splits at the time?
Right.
Yeah.
Jameek, the prior world record holder, splits when he deletes Spoutman and not when he actually obtains Spout Cross. So I incorrectly recorded his time for that split.
Now we get to see where the legend himself saves 2 seconds over me every single run, somehow. I don't know.
There's actually
Go ahead.
an interesting routing decision that I think Falzar gets to take advantage of here where Gregor can't, and that is M-Boomer doesn't matter as much on Circus Man in Falzar as in Gregor. So I actually delay my lotto code edit all the way to Greentown.
Mm-hmm. I assume you still do the just the Navi cust edit?
Yes.
So you're combining 2 folder edits into one.
Yep. It makes Heal Water slightly worse, but Heal Water with a Mach Gun really isn't that bad, especially given how good Aquaman's or Spoutman's chip is. And then Circus Man, we have a Mach Gun reg, which is not great since we can't charge it and it doesn't do all that much damage, but it's enough to skip a cycle if he jumps to the middle ever and you can use it. Since for Falzar's, our cycle damage is 200 as opposed to Gregor, it's 130.
Might have missed it. Did you use the sneak run?
Yep, that's what I did first.
Okay. I'm just trying to think how much time overall that saves. It's just combining 2 folder edits when you're already doing a menuing section. It does save time for sure, but yeah. Yeah, your Circus Man split's gonna be much faster than Gregor's would be.
Yeah. It's about 10 seconds faster than I remember your were being through the lotto codes and edit portion. There's a certain corner that I always check my time around, and I think yours was like 2:27 at that point, and mine here was 2:17.
Keep in mind,
Rounding
2 of
this
those
bottom
seconds
corner
are just
after.
lotto codes.
Yeah, that's fair. You could be through that a little bit faster. Which reminds me, I want to convince you to skip Elm Trap.
I'd consider it.
My primary argument is actually look at how successful this Falzar run is, and remember that against F-Beast, we actually only have 2 good chips, M-Boomer and Elm Trap. Whereas against G-Beast, you're relying on 3, Elm Trap, Black Bomb, and M-Boomer. So just drop that number down to 2, and then you can put the second double crack up in the top 4 as well, just like I do here. But that's probably a discussion for a different time. My soul webs weren't as clean as they could be. I don't want to say I should practice soul webs, because that sounds kind of unfun. But
practicing some things in this game are just dull. Honestly, is probably the best word to use, because
the difficulty. Oh, sorry, continue.
Yeah, it's just, this is essentially just menuing simulator. It's just you press A and then you press up or down and you press A. Like, we know what the strats are. We have them memorized. We would never forget them, I'm pretty sure. Like, I've come back to this game after months of just not playing it, and I still remember the soul web strats.
Yes.
But
the key for me is I'm always trying to do super minor optimizations with my movement to try and move as little in the wrong direction as possible. And occasionally I'll end up in the line between two panels, and it can be really hard to tell what panel you're standing in.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The same way you will try and optimize your corners to save a frame or two and then eventually get punished and lose 15. I try and optimize my movements through these to save a frame or two and eventually get punished by pressing A in the wrong spot and lose 15.
There was some discussion about having these be randomized, like, completely, if you were to do, like, a randomizer run too, which I think would be super interesting. But if they were randomized in the actual game, that would just be dreadful. It would just be more memorization, because you'd have to remember all of the possible patterns.
Agreed. We've all watched speedruns of Clue or various puzzle games, and it's just memorize everything or guess the fastest option and reset if you're wrong.
Yep. It reminds me of the BN4 passcode, where there's 5 total passcodes, and basically what you do is just a quick strategy to figure out exactly which one it is. Like, that's basically all you'd have to do here, is you just quickly check, okay, where do I look that will tell me exactly what pattern this is? And, alright, now I know the strats.
So this is where we get punished for not having extra Zenny from all the way
Right.
back in Blastman.
Right. Now I remember. I was like,
If
did you
you-
forget? Go ahead.
Get 300 extra Zenny from somewhere, all the way back in Blastman. When we buy sneak runs, you can buy 4 instead of 3. And that extra sneak run we would have used here as Spoutman to save that encounter and the small chances of getting a second encounter in Central 2 and a small chance of an encounter in Central 3. Overall, it would be 9 seconds of time save from the encounters, although you have to use the sneak run, which takes about 4. And since it's only 5 seconds, there's no point ever going out of your way to try and get that extra Zenny. It's just if it magically falls in your lap, you can make use of it. The thing is, you have to get it before you beat Blastman, so the only reasonable situation is you picked up a GMD, which you shouldn't do because not many of them give you good rewards, you're probably losing time, or you got a battle mystery data that had Zenny in it.
Yep. Battle Green Mystery Datas have a chance to get 1,000 Zenny, which would actually be perfect because we normally go out of our way to pick up 700. And so that gives us the extra 300 we need, and we can skip the 700.
Yep, I think if we're not talking about Boomer or Tornado, the optimal battle in Central 1 is a fast draw with like Vulcan on the triple Metar plus Green Mystery data into get 1,000 Zenny.
Mm-hmm. Might even be with a mini bomb. Because normally you can't easily... Oh. No, you can still make it a 2 virus fight pretty easily. As long as you just get a 3 chip draw.
Yeah. Or Vulcan or something like that.
Vulcan can still do the fight with the S rank, for sure.
Oh, that's true, because you wouldn't be able to, you'd have to wait on the bottom Metar to move up.
Yep, you need to... That's why I would not want the Vulcan there. You would want a 3 chip draw, which lets you delete the middle one immediately and then counter hit the other 2.
course. The battle mystery datas are usually a 1 in 12 in each area, except in Central 1, it's a 1 in 32, because if you roll the battle that has the battle mystery data, there's a 50% chance it just doesn't show up. So I am definitely not advocating resetting for battle mystery data in Central 1. It will take you an hour to get a single run. And that's on average.
It's interesting because I've seen very few of them since I restarted my BN6 grind, and that makes so much sense.
And like Boomer, it's definitely worth it.
Mm-hmm.
For Gregor at a minimum, but
Here we saw the time save over Gregor, at least like for this particular split, because we've already done the door fights.
we'll also get to see Heal Water, which in theory is an interesting and different play since we're Spoutman and not Heatman. So there's a couple different strats involved, but I may or may not royally screw them up.
I'm down to see this. That's actually something interesting that I just thought of, is that there's next to no RNG in this split for Falzar. The only RNG is what did you draw on Heal Water and what did you draw on Circus Man.
And do you get the random encounters?
I suppose, yeah. Which
you could go Central 2 without any.
Yeah. So this is like bathroom splits level of RNG.
Mm-hmm. The Heal Water fight is even less RNG dependent in Falzar than it is in Gregor.
Mm-hmm.
Also.
Yeah, you have Mach Gun rigged anyway. And I remember seeing this live.
Yep, I took just the cannon. Which isn't a particularly good strat. And then I get counter hit out of my attack.
Ooh.
Even worse, you can't just buster the back guy down because you're putting cracks down when you're using your charge shot. So even if I hadn't stepped off that panel, he would have been at 100 HP.
You hate to see it.
Yup. So if anybody out there wants to run some Battle Network 6 Falzar, there's your time save on Whir. Your first real big chunk right there.
Honestly, like, I guess Diveman split was crazy good, but like every split so far, except for Diveman, has had a fair amount of time save in it. So like, these splits would not be too bad to run up against for now.
I think the Spout Cross was close to my gold.
You had a good fight, but I think it can still be slightly better. And
yeah,
you did get the one random encounter.
Correct. FB's tutorial, exactly the same as the GB's tutorial.
Now that we have F-Beast, just a little talk about the differences between F and G-Beast. F-Beast has float and air shoes, or one of the two. I honestly don't know. Do you know, Last?
I think it's both. I might be wrong.
So we'll just go with both for now. Realistically, not that important in the run, because there's never a time that you really want to be standing where there's a hole.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever used them.
G-Beast has super armor. This is incredibly useful on fights where you basically just don't care about getting hit. However, because F-Beast doesn't have that, F-Beast has to really focus on dodging as well as charging to use the chip. With our buster stats currently, the charge damage will actually be 200. So, let's see. Also, I feel... Ooh, counter hit out of that.
So taking Trainer would have been smarter, since it would have been an easy way to get the 100 damage we need in order to... to get to do the 2-cycle. If you use Makan, you can get him when he jumps to the middle, but he didn't jump to the middle for a while, so I tried to do busters, and then he did counter hit me out of using the Makan for any damage. It was a really good draw that I just misexecuted a little.
Yeah. However, that fight, other than outside of like extra draws, that fight can be faster in Falzar than it is in Gregar. Because I think Last mentioned it earlier, a cycle's worth of damage for Gregar is 130 versus 200 as Beast Out. Someone recently asked about Beast Out for Gregar, and you could theoretically do it for that fight. However, the time taken to consider whether it's possible is probably not worth it. On top
Agreed.
of the fact that you also then
Folders
have to
must be less likely to be ready for it.
Yeah, you have to get a lot more extra draws. So now, here we are with Recover 30 stars. Buy 3 of them.
Yep, so at this point I buy 3. If I had another Reflector, or I felt like I should be keeping my Mach-Gun or Train Arrow A in, which I decided not to for this run for I don't know why reasons, you could only buy 2. The key is I dropped below 1,000 Zenny. Because of that, I'm going to have to pick up Zenny later on in order to join Lawyers in the Making. So it does take a little bit of time to buy yourself all the way down to 0. You could also buy a 4th, but I think I've decided that 3 is the magic number for removing all the bad chips I don't want out of my folder. If I bought another one beyond that, it would be removing something that's still pretty decent, and Recover 30s are great for playing with F-Beast, but they really suck when you're trying to, like, play as Spoutman against F-Beast.
Yep. But they are still nice folder flow for digging for your good chips, which is relatively okay.
True.
It sucks when you're on G-Beast, for example, and you draw like B, D, and A codes, and nothing good.
Yeah, I would say that's bad.
Nice.
Yeah, so again, the reason we want Recover 30s is they are star code and they are null element because there is no heal element in this game. So they are chargeable as F-Beast, and we'll be making lots of charge attacks with them. And worst case, we can always heal because I am not using Undershirt, and there are a couple of scary fights.
Yep. Your Namikos can fit Undershirt in. However, it would fit in place of attack +1. Also, brief little note. Over Gregar, you don't actually need the unlocker, so you save a little bit of time here in Falzar. The unlocker is you typically used to pick up Black Bomb. But if you, as we were discussing earlier, it's not really necessary in Falzar, so you save a little bit of time walking over and picking up the unlocker.
Jameek got to under BBS with 7 HP. I totally believe it. Under BBS is the scariest part of this game in terms of encounters, hands down. Falzar can also be pretty scary. So this is where we deviate ever so slightly to pick up our extra Zenny, because there's a 3,000 Zenny Blue Mystery data right past these ladies, which is we will be using to sponsor our very brief trip through law school.
That's slightly less time than it would take to pick up Unlocker. Not interested.
I've been holding down just for no good reason while talking to him lately and been punished for it now multiple times. So don't do that.
Not interested.
On the other hand, his reaction is funny enough to be worth it, probably. So, checking back in our comparison versus the Gregar world record, Gregar world record's Circus Man time was 52:30, and here we were 54:50. Now, granted, there's definitely time saved that could be had, and I would say a better run up to this point would probably have like a 54 even Circus Man, but at Circus Man, when things are mostly linked back up between the two games, you should expect to be maybe a minute and a half behind Gregor world record, or Gregor in general.
Makes sense to me, considering that Spout Cross probably loses you about 2-ish minutes or so. Minute and a half. It's probably where the minute and a half comes from, so.
Mm-hmm.
Now we do the big folder edit.
So the magic number here, I think, is like 11 chips. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then very particularly, you want to have Emboomer, Ellum Trap, and the double cracks at the top.
Pretty good folder edit overall. And now his folder is really good. He has 3 codes. Again, B, D, A. The better codes. Interesting. Interesting fight.
Yeah, so this is what I was talking about. Doing Greentown fights is really hard and confusing. Like, would it have been better to F-Beast there and try to charge on the Armadillo, or try to charge on the Bee? I don't remember what they're called. I don't know, and I haven't played this game enough to really know. Probably it would have been better to Beast out, but also you kind of want to go with whatever your default is.
Yeah, like, I think TheLastAaoa, probably Erothaur, all agree that the best thing to do is whatever's the fastest to select, because you already, it's your first instinct. Obviously, that's not true, but if you spend like 30, more reasonably, like 10-15 seconds analyzing your draw and figuring out what the best draw is, you could have done the fight in those 10 to 15 seconds.
Yep, there's a time to spend lots of time analyzing, and that's when you're practicing. And you should absolutely practice, and you should do the analysis, and you should figure out what's fastest so you can learn it.
Yep, I think absolutely in the moment, it's like whatever you decide on first is probably going to be fastest, because now you don't have to think about it anymore.
So, for example, my analysis of that fight would have actually been to only use a single charge, which would have been to copy damage the bees, then move down, and the FB slash hits in 2 hitboxes, so you would have targeted the Armadillo, but you would have then hit the Metar, who would have moved into that same row, and it would have only required one.
That is true. However, the Armadillo reacts to your attack very quickly, and you are likely to get knocked out of the attack by it. So I take that. I had actually practiced that specific encounter to do it more conservatively, because I don't want to get counter hit by the Armadillo. If we were in G-Beast, absolutely we should do your strat because we have super armor.
Mm-hmm. Also a fair point. I typically assume that I have super armor when I'm beasting out, so.
I generally always assume that, yeah.
It takes a lot to get used to.
One of the reasons I don't play Falzar.
Ellum Trap is usually slow. The Armadillo wouldn't be a problem. You would just not have the Armadillo hit you, but you would have to use Ellum Trap and then shoot the bees with your Buster Bugged Buster, which could take a while because you might have to do a full charge shot. And then Ellum Trap is also a double time stop trip, so I try not to use it unless I know that the fight is fast when done with it. So there's a couple of Sky Gauntlets and a couple under BBS fights where Ellum Trap is really good. And by really good, I mean worse than Emboomer, but passable. And then mostly it's there for F-Beast. Yeah, specifically, Armadillos suck for doing charges. Actually, I could talk about Greentown fights for a little bit. There are enemies that have exactly 100 health or less, and a couple enemies with more than 100 health. And if you put if you put copy damage on the wrong enemy and slice a different enemy, you will accidentally delete what you're fighting before your second slash goes through, and then the copy damage won't deal the full 130 you need to do for the bees. So Risch, your strategy that you suggested, do you know if you do the horizontal or the vertical slash first?
You do
because
horizontal.
If you do the vertical
well,
slash,
I guess it's vertical. I think of
Yeah,
it as horizontal, but that's
If
just
you do the longsword slash first, your strategy wouldn't work because you'd leave
Yes.
the bee alive.
Yep.
But you're right, we do the wide sword first.
yep.
And armadillos also suck for the reason I described. There's a sky gauntlet fight in particular where you can easily get deleted if you don't properly play around armadillos and their ability to counter hit you.
Yeah, it's like if you need to two-hit an armadillo with like a slash, for example, on later armadillos, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't go for it.
Yep, there's very particular timing.
Like I would only ever go for it if it was to get a single slash off on them.
In fact, I even think I screw up the fight in question. We'll get to talk about that later.
But yeah, for the most part, this will be completely identical to Gregor. Just general pathing. I think at this point, the only differences between the two should be the fights. Our folder is already set up. We no longer have to do any folder edits. We have to both versions have to do one more Navi cust edit to add slip run. The Navi cust will be 100% identical between the two. So the only major differences are now basically just the fights.
Yep.
Now there's a number of forced fights, including one coming up very shortly.
A large number of forced fights. Yeah.
Approximately 20 coming up in about 10-20 minutes. 23
And
to be
we'll have
exact.
a brief stint as Spoutman versus He-Man. But again, that's just fights also.
Yeah.
I guess it's different if you're Terra, because then it's Spoutman versus Elekman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. So this fight went about like expected. Technically
All the
speaking,
fixed encounters are the same.
I think that might be faster than Gregor's because of all of the downtime on your charge shot with Heat Cross.
Yeah, F-Beast also, I think charges even faster than Heat Cross does. It's incredibly fast charge.
Yeah. It's like the charge is fast, but the one downside to Heat Cross is the end lag. Normally you want to try and get hit out of it, but in that fight you can't easily do that. So it might be a consideration to go for Beast Out strats on Gregor.
Probably, to be honest. Also, if you draw Vulcan 2 or Double Crack, those one-shot the Corn viruses because it's exactly 180 damage.
Mm.
And so you can get by without even using a charge, which would be faster still. Like the fastest draw there for Falzar is copy damage, any chip, and then Vulcan 2 or Double Crack, and you just hold A, release, and regrab, and F-Beast will interrupt its own claw/end animation to attack the other corn and delete it.
Yep.
Which is a blessing and a curse. I will accidentally use chips all the time because F-Beast has no end lag at all and will just keep attacking things.
Yeah, it's the same thing with G-Beast. You just don't notice it as much because you don't use it as frequently. That's going to be one of the funny things is when we start optimizing Gregor to the point that we're using Beast Out more. And making it more like Falzar.
Yeah, there's gonna be some really funny moments of people on good runs and making mistakes that Falzar runners wouldn't make.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's actually a good question, Smog. The forced fights are completely identical between the two versions. I believe, outside of like weird things with BN4, for example, because different scenarios, the forced fights between versions are identical across, like in a single game. So like Blue Moon versus Red Sun, the forced fights would be identical. Same thing with Colonel versus Protoman. Same thing with Gregor versus Falzar. The only
Is
game.
that true? Blue and white?
No,
That's the only one I
that's
know.
why
Blue
Smog.
and white have different effects.
That's why Smog is asking, is because he's coming from BN3, where it's the only game that has different force fights across the versions. it's the exception in this case.
Oh, and network transmission and WonderSwan are easily confusable, but they also have different force fights. It's easy to understand that you might think those are two games the same version, or different versions, same game. But...
I can't believe the WonderSwan version is just like so much faster, dude. Why would Capcom do that to us? Can't get
it's literally just the frame rate. Like if you check the world record times and you take the 1 and multiply it by 73 over 60 or whatever, it about checks out.
Can't believe 13 and a half times 76 over 60 is approximately 56. It's crazy. So, one of the considerations for a very good run in BN6 in general is how many random encounters you get. So far this split, Last has gotten the average number. He got 1 in Green 1, both trips, 1 in Green 2, and he's gotten 1 in Judge Tree 1. That's all expected so far, and now he's gotten... Oh, that is so clean.
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. So, the thing that you typically look for is to skip this encounter, which he did not. There is a skip.
I actually never looked to skip that encounter. I quite fear skipping that encounter.
I want to talk about that encounter. I felt like a genius. Double cracked to 60 damage twice, and I drew 2 attack plus 10s, so it kills each Metar with 1 hit.
That was really nice. That was
Which
really
is
nice.
Extra important because I didn't need to beast out. So one thing you don't need to think about in Gregor is your beast out charges. But in Falzar, I want to get to the boss with at least 2 beast out charges, which means I need to be keeping constant track. The first fight I didn't use one, so I was at 3, then I used one down to 2, and if I'd used one there, I would have dropped to 1 and been unable to beast out on this fight. Fortunately, I was able to conserve that beast out charge, and now I can use it here, which is a very fast fight to charge up.
It's very nice. Very nice. So yeah, normally there's a skip called Lurking Skip that you want to do to try to avoid a random encounter. The second one in Judge Tree 2. It's not the best trick to do. Erothaur, as he's mentioned, doesn't like to do it. I know a lot of runners who don't like to do it. But it does skip a random encounter and saves a fair amount of time. And then Celine Dion Skip helps to also skip one, which is very nice. And now for this fight. So I assume the optimal draw is just 4 chips that you can charge, but we were one short
Close,
with that.
but not quite. The optimal draw would actually be to take like Vulcans and double cracks specifically, because you can do counter hit strats on Judgeman, and they are faster than just doing 4 charges. However, I haven't learned them yet, so I just look for 4 charges.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I considered even in Gregor on fights like Diveman EX. As last mentioned, Vulcan 2 and Double Crack actually do 180 damage, which back in the day was actually the amount of damage that a G-Beast charge did, right? Because we didn't put the attack plus 1 in, so we did 180 damage. So it was equivalent to just use the chip versus charging it, and you could use the chip to then go for a counter hit and get double the damage with the next chip. So in Falzar you could do the same thing. It's like slightly less damage up front, but more damage on the second chip. So like 180 plus 360, for example, is more than 400.
Yep, those counter hit strats work out really well on Judgeman, DiveEX, and Circus Man. But that would require me, well, I mean, coming from Gregor, I didn't even know Judgmans had attacks, much less that you could counter hit them. So,
Yeah.
not something I've invested much time in.
And here we go. Now we get the final Navi Coast edit, completely identical to Gregor. Have Slip Runner in. You've seen it before. It's really good. Very fast. Would recommend.
And the ability to skip encounters with Slip Runner is, and the Slip Luck glitch in particular, is even more important in Falzar because we have to do that management of your Beast Out charges.
Mm-hmm. This is true. And now we will begin probably the most exciting part of the Falzar analysis. Sky Gauntlets. Basically 23 forced fights in a row where you have to manage your Beast Out counter very well and decide which fights you're going to Beast Out on and which fights you're going to instead try to use like Spout Cross or look for some chip draws.
Some of you may know that I have a Gregor tutorial series on my Twitch page that will help you with all your routing through Sky Gauntlets from the Gregor perspective. I did recently add a Falzar brain dump to it because I'm not planning on working on Falzar much in the future. It wasn't quite as polished, but if you need help with your Sky Gauntlet stuff for Falzar, you can find information on it there. Strategically speaking, I'm coming into the Sky Gauntlets only really paying attention to 3 fights. There are 3 fights that if I am below a certain Beast Out charge count, I will not let myself Beast Out on. And otherwise, I'm allowed to do whatever is fast in the fight that I'm taking. Because there are many fights where Spout Cross is just the better option.
Yep. Spout Cross, you do have to consider elemental weaknesses in a lot of these things. And there are some fire viruses that Spout Cross will just absolutely obliterate.
Spout Cross is also extremely fast charge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, extremely fast.
Question about the gauntlets. Does your Beast Out counter reset at the start of a new gauntlet?
No.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And in fact, getting the encounter between Judge 1 and Judge 2 can screw you up.
I can imagine, yeah.
I got really tempted by the chips there, and I think I could have made them work, but I didn't quite figure it out fast enough. And then I attacked the wrong one.
Yeah, it's one thing to keep in mind is F-Beast and G-Beast actually will lock onto the enemy in your row, or it will lock onto one of the other 2. I think it's usually whichever one's closer to you, so like
Yes.
in a closer column. So it's something to consider.
Yep. Very difficult to wrap your brain around without having put a lot of practice getting used to it in, because it's just another thing to be thinking about while you're trying to do an already complicated fight.
I'm curious, did you decide not to do the slip walk off the green guy?
Yeah, I haven't been practicing it, and I've been screwing it up and not getting punished, but I don't want to mess it up now when my F-Beast count matters so much more.
Mm.
I've recently developed a new strat for this. I want to show it off. It's really tight. Oh, wait, I didn't get it. If you're about a frame earlier there, you can actually kill the Punchy at the same time. You'll note that the way the bubbler broke, I actually hit him, and he just didn't take damage from it.
Yep. That makes sense. This fight is nice and identical to Gregor, but with a nice
Actually
bird.
faster.
Is
than
the
Gregor,
F-Beast charge actually faster than Gregor's?
If you do the heat cross strat there, you have to wait for the guy to come down.
Oh, I don't do the heat cross strat. That's what I'm saying. I beast out.
Okay,
the fight.
sure. I think F-Beast's charge might be faster, but I'd have to check.
That is interesting. Is it normal that you try to spout cross this fight?
Yes. Because in optimally you can 2-cycle it because you can get 2 charge shots off.
Yeah.
So I don't go for the Elm Trap, but I just copy damaged poorly there. They lined up not the way I wanted.
Mm.
In this one, so in Gregor, you're hoping that the Old Stove moves down instead of back, And in Falzar, you're hoping it moves back instead of down, because getting the extra splash damage from the bubbler is faster than needing to do a second charge shot. That's a cute little difference. The third Sky Gauntlet's judge is the hardest by far, and it is the one that you can die in. So I take generally more conservative strats here, trying to keep my HP total up going into the last fight.
This is a
And also
very
this
nice
second
draw for this fight. Would you normally beast out that fight?
Yes.
So he has one extra beast out charge here.
Yep, so here I am allowed to beast out. This fight is super scary to beast out because Quakers counter hit you if you try and attack them right after they land. So you have to try and get their timing lined up, but they work out so clean there.
That was such a perfect lineup because the one with more HP was copy damaged, I believe, and ended up in the back or behind the other one, which is so nice. Which means that the the longsword slash ended up hitting him, as well as the copy damage coming in.
If you try to do that fight with the bees by getting a second charge shot off on the bees, you will jump into the bees and take a bunch of damage, which is why I go for the quick little busters to finish it off before it can summon the bees. And then drawing that M-Boomer there is super important because helicopters also suck. You can almost never slash helicopters. This is the fight with the Armadillo that's scary. And I actually screwed it up, and you can see why it's scary, but then I was able to recover because I had so much HP. There are two ways that can get screwed up. If you jump too late, the Armadillo will run over you and counter you out, and if you jump too early, you jump into the bubbles, and then you get hit out of the bubbles by the second bubble, which jumps you back into the waiting arms of the Armadillo, and they can combo you for like 300 damage out of nowhere.
Spooky.
Yeah, I've definitely died to that multiple times.
It's so weird to me. I always forget that, like, I always try and, like, wrap my head around why copy damage is faster on that fight. I know why it is, because you're waiting on the Metar anyway, and it results in the M-Boomer not having to travel as far. But, like, I always forget it, because it's just like, but the M-Boomer's gonna travel anyway. It's still gonna hit him.
Yep.
This fight, I can imagine being a little weird.
It's not too bad. You just gotta time things out right.
Yeah. Because you would normally actually want to copy damage the bubble or the starfish, but you can't because the bubble will happen immediately. This looks like a fight you would have beasted out on. Or even maybe Spout Cross, actually.
I beast out there, but ideally, even better is double crack.
Yeah, double crack also just works. Alright, coming into the fun fight. I assume this one would be really nice to beast out with Gregar.
Yes.
But you gotta be patient because no super armor.
Yep. Yeah, in Gregar, we probably should be beasting out that one. Except that we do the damage boost with Heat Cross, don't we?
Yeah.
I guess Falzar, you always get a beast chargeable chip, and Gregar, you don't.
Mm. There's always the option of attack plus 10. But if you draw M-Boomer, you just use that.
This is actually just fast. This fight sucks because of how things can move, and getting the program advance there, I think, is actually one of the faster options. Although you don't sound convinced.
No, that's actually insane. I wasn't even paying attention. I was thinking about Gregar on that fight before, but wow. No, it works out really well there. The only time loss is due to the animation of the program advance, like, changing.
It is even slower time loss, or slower time stop than others.
All things considered, not too bad. Looks like you're gonna lose a little bit of time to your gold.
Yeah, I was about 6 seconds behind gold, which, considering a few mistakes here and there, and maybe not as many good draws as I could have had, totally reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Risch, you and I have both had the experience of coaching somebody who has not played much Battle Network 6 Gregor before through the Sky Gauntlets, and I think you would agree with me when you say it's really fun, actually, to like help somebody new go through the Gregor strats, because it's just like, here's how you do Heat Cross effectively in a bunch of different scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I could not imagine trying to teach a new Falzar runner how to do Sky Gauntlets the same way we did, of just like, I have 5 seconds to explain to you how to do this fight. No, it's a mess.
Yeah, like with some of the like timings of when you want to use your charge, or like you have to first analyze the draw yourself, and then you have to explain, like, because ideally the point of coaching, right, is that you want to get your point across and help them learn like what decision to make on their own. So you want to explain like what they're going to do and sort of explain why they're going to do it. But you have to do all that after analyzing the draw yourself for the particular fight, and with Falzar that's just so much more complicated.
Yeah. On the one hand, my notes for the Falzar Gauntlet is actually generally just like, if you draw M-Boomer, use it. Otherwise, here's what you do. Sometimes it's more complicated, but the technique involved in executing those properly is extremely difficult if you're coming into the fight blind, especially if you're not that familiar with how F-Beast works or how the viruses are going to move, because it's just so different from anything else you've encountered up to this point.
Yep, for sure. Chap's a very nice draw here, very fast. As an option, at least. It's not the fastest option, but it's an option.
Slightly faster on average to use Elm Trap than to run if the enemy is going to use an attack that triggers it quickly.
Running away as Spoutman in this case is a 50% chance, for those that aren't aware. Oh, did you get the perfect thing again? Did you get a Central 1 encounter?
No, no Central 1 encounter.
So you did get the perfect Aquaman. Oh, man.
Only one encounter is Aquaman.
Fun fact, he did the same thing as Heatman in his Greg RPB. It's crazy.
I took a strat from a well-known BN6 runner and just got lucky.
Yep. That is the way.
To be fair, at this point, I am on world record pace from Sky Gauntlets, being about 41 seconds ahead of my PB. If I can keep time with my own PB, I'd be at like a 4:17 flat, which would have been where by like 8 seconds or so. But we're gonna destroy that time real soon.
Well, yeah, because the old Falzar strats had not implemented newer techniques in Mr. Weather comps.
Or Blast Dive, for that matter.
Mm-hmm. So this is another set of 5 force fights. This one looks like you're just probably gonna charge. Ooh. Wonder, can you get it timed such that you don't have to worry about the guy moving?
I don't think so. If your second trip, or if your second chip is one that does decent damage and not like a recov, you can just hold A and you'll auto fire at him before he moves.
Yeah, like a Vulcan 2 would be insane.
Yes. And fortunately, outside of the airplane fight, these are, I would say, probably even easier than Gregor, because I can't draw Black Bomb and die on this fight messing up the Black Bomb strat.
Yep.
I'm always just going to Beast out.
P-stat strats are good here. Very good. Seems like he slightly messed up the fight, but all
Yeah,
things considered.
I also don't know why it took so long for me to pick the chips. What was I thinking about?
Considering if you wanted to just use the Vulcans naturally rather than wait on them. Technically speaking, they lined up perfectly for it.
That's true.
Hindsight is 20/20 though. You can't run that risk every time. Oh yes, the best fight. Press A, hold A, press A, hold A.
Yeah, it's fun to take Elm Trap in that fight and not use it.
Yep.
Because it's slow.
Because it's already a slow chip with 2 time stops, but in that fight, you're waiting and waiting and waiting for the puffies to attack.
Mm-hmm.
And then this fight is really nice with Falzar, because it's just a bunch of fire viruses.
No need to take those chips, by the way.
So I believe the Spout Cross charge shot normally does 70 damage, which means 2x is 140. So it's actually doing more damage with a faster charge and less end lag than Heat Cross on that particular fight.
You got it.
The only difference is that it doesn't have as many hitboxes, which doesn't matter when you're just firing at Mach speed, basically. Nice draw.
Yeah, again, airplanes absolutely suck. And there are 2 airplane fights, and the goal is just draw and boomer, and I got it on both, which is wonderful.
All right. And then coming up, we're probably going to see some really good time save on this split. Looking at last splits, which you guys can't see. Last gold is a 1231, and I can tell you for a fact that his Gregar gold is approximately like a 1040-ish, 1050-ish. So, obviously Gregar could be a little different, but those fights are probably just as good, if not better, than Gregar's. So, I don't think you should lose time here just due to strictly Falzar strats. Which means that there's a lot of potential time save on this split.
A lot, yeah. I will say I think Element Man is faster on Gregor, because in Falzar you're generally going to go for like 4 charge shots, which can be slow, as opposed to Gregor, if you get things lined up nicely with his element change, could be faster. I don't quite remember.
M Boomer with like that, yeah, definitely. Black Bomb can make it really fast. Here we go. So these are relatively newer, thanks to Last for coming up with these. Slightly newer Mr. Weather strats. You use the slipwalk off the prog at the start to keep your encounter or your step counter lower. It gets reset to the last time you got an encounter check when you step off of the cloud. With slipwalk, you don't get encounter checks, so that helps quite a bit. And it means that he's way less likely to get an encounter in this particular area.
We also found out that if you manage to skip the encounters before you finish the Typhoon, or when you finish that Typhoon, it's not worth it to check out. On average, it'll just be faster to go for it and hope you continue to skip the encounters. Which we'll get in on the last check.
It's unfortunate, but it happens. And he has to deal with 2 armadillos. Version 2. He got hit out of copy damage too, which is really unfortunate. But so just also checking in. Last mentioned this earlier, but he's wants to have 2 G or F beast charges going into the final boss fight, which he's at 2 right now. It's definitely possible, especially with this particular slipwalk that makes it so he will not get an encounter in this area. Period. Like it's just impossible, barring any dumb movement errors. So he might get an encounter in Comp 3 that he can't F-Beast on.
Yeah, that'd be correct. Fortunately, the encounter rate in Comp 3, when done correctly, is really low. Unfortunately, doing it correctly is really minute, so it can easily go wrong.
Yeah, it's very tight and very tough to be perfect on that. Did you slip up the ramp?
Don't slip up the ramp.
Proud of you. That doesn't make a difference time-wise, or step counter-wise, I should say. Oh, that typhoon. That typhoon spooked me.
I'll note that falling off the typhoons is catastrophic because we're going to get an encounter that we can't F-feast off of if we do. Yeah, so there's a slight chance of it getting an extra encounter there because I couldn't buffer because I didn't pick up the other noodle, but once we're on the cloud, now it's like I didn't make that mistake.
Except your step counter's higher.
No, because like 3 steps, sure. Buffering the slip back down doesn't matter, it's only the extra distance that I win.
I thought that because you don't get an encounter check, it would just reset back to its original position before you got off the cloud.
Oh, I actually have no idea.
Well,
you might be right, in which case I made an error and got punished for it right here.
Here we go. Luckily, this was actually a really nice fight. Just 2 spout cross-charge shots.
I could have done it even faster with the double Vulcan, because you can just counter hit the Rolly guy.
Yep, that's very true.
But hindsight is 20/20.
Mm-hmm. So only 2 charges is pretty mediocre.
Yep, we need 5 in total, or 4 plus a whole bunch of busters.
Technically speaking, it would have been more damage to put the attack plus 10 on the Vulcan and use it naturally.
Fair. I debated going for the Aqua Beast strats, but you usually only use those on Element Man EX because he cycles through faster.
And there we go. We're now ahead of the previous world record and saved about 30 seconds. Almost 40 seconds.
Yep, actually, I'm curious what my gold is in that split now, because I just got it, and I don't... Oh wait, we're looking at it. We can probably figure it out.
It was like
so it was like an 11:30.
It was over 12 minutes.
Oh yeah, I'm bad at math. It was a 12:27
Yep.
Element Man split, which means that's still a minute of time save in that split available.
Yep. Because he got 2 encounters that he otherwise shouldn't have gotten, and I think the Element Man's fight could probably be faster. I see the inexperience with these new 5-second strats being shown.
Yeah, make sure to go out of my way to lose as much of that 5 seconds as I can.
We have learned recently that it saves approximately 5 seconds if you were to go to the Greentown first and use the shortcut instead of jacking in from your home PC. That's a relatively new, but also in the Gregor world record strat. But it's something that not a lot of people are super familiar with yet because it's still relatively newer and goes completely against everyone's muscle memory. I was actually practicing the Moonstone split yesterday.
Probably worth it, to be honest.
Yeah. My muscle memory was getting there. I've also started to keep track when I'm practicing of my times that I get on particular splits so I can make a tally and average them based on our discussion that we had on your stream yesterday. Build brackets of what a good time looks like.
With heavy RNG games like this, it's a very important technique for getting good times and or world records is to have a good approach to resetting. And that was a conversation I had on my stream last night about how do you go about coming up with a reset plan that doesn't just feel good, but is like mathematically good for getting your target time.
Mm-hmm. So, is that gal on your calendar? Or is that just some dog?
No idea, but it's probably Gao.
Look at the top of the screen when
Oh, sorry. Are you talking about?
No, not.
Oh,
like,
when we jack
not,
out? Okay.
Yeah, when you jack out.
Yeah.
I
Top
swear,
right, top left.
It's like straight up top. Like,
Okay.
pretty sure that was Gao. I don't know if you'll have enough time since you're gonna run down immediately, but it is Gao. Okay, I'm not going crazy. Falzar sprites are weird.
Is it not? What is it in Gregor?
Well, I mean, everything changes. I don't actually know what it is in Gregor. It might not even be a calendar. Like, the sprites are so randomly different, it's crazy. Oh, you even got this?
Yep. I got a 0 encounter moonstone.
So, one of the nice things about this is that, I can actually tell you, if you get no encounters with perfect execution, you should get approximately a 450 moonstone. Like, you should be going to sleep at about the 450 mark.
Ah, but see, Falzar has fewer text boxes to mash through when talking to people outside. So this is time save on Gregor.
I was also thinking about that earlier. It's like, how many text boxes is this? How many does this guy have? Is that like 14?
He's got a few, but this guy's much shorter.
Oh my god, that's so much faster.
Yep.
The other guy's like 20 text boxes. That was like 10 or less.
There you go. 4:45 bedtime.
Well, to be fair, I split now, so that's about 2 seconds difference. 2-3 seconds over my gold. So, that's an incredibly good moonstone part. Now, last doesn't split there, which is fair. You realistically, honestly want your splits to be relatively even in terms of length. I kept the moonstone split because why not? It's like a 5-minute split versus last combines it into the blast dive split, which makes it about 10 minutes long. I'm also a bigger fan of keeping shorter splits because it showcases where the time loss is in an analysis.
Sure.
But obviously, like, sometimes you can't really separate splits too much. Remember when we didn't have sky gauntlets though? How long and dreadful it was keeping track of, like, Element Man and where the mistakes were.
Yeah, a 25-minute long split, anyone?
It's like Judge Man is currently one of the longer splits right now. It's like 17, 18 minutes.
That, Smug. It's Gao in both games. Shoutouts to BN5.
Yeah, wow.
So I also do the new AC/DC movement.
This
Go
is,
for a couple of blocks here.
again, optimization made by Last. This is a choice you can make. You do get a number of encounter checks on the way to this chess piece. You do have to bonk there, though, to talk to the whatever piece that is. And then you slipwalk off the prog. This I would always do. You can choose to not slipwalk off the red Navi. It's a chance, relatively smaller chance at an encounter. And then you just sort of, you basically wing it and see if you get the encounter there.
This encounter isn't much time loss.
Yeah.
If you get it, you can not jack out, and if you don't get it, you have to jack out in order to avoid time loss or an encounter check up ahead.
So it's like the time loss is really not that much, but still pretty nice. If you choose to not slipwalk off of the red Navi, like I said, you have a small chance at getting an encounter early on. And what that results in is you actually can get a second encounter.
Yeah.
So it can be worse. but it could also just be faster with the ability to actually slip run around. Here we go. The important part of the run. We know it's a world record.
Oh, he doesn't soft lock.
We know it's a world record, so we know what happens. But you know how funny that would be if we were showcasing this run and you just soft locked. We're just like, it wasn't actually a world record analysis. This was just to make fun of Last.
I got an idea for our April 1st stream.
Oh man, God, that would be.
If you try to slip walk into another area, it works normally, and you just don't have slip at the end when you make it through, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep, you just go to the next area and don't have slip walk anymore.
It's just back to normal. I don't know why warps specifically cause problems. And similarly, why getting items causes problems on the Japanese version.
Yeah, that one's like way weirder to me.
Like, that just doesn't make sense. Interesting.
Yeah, I got punished by going for the copy damage on the starfish.
I bet the reason it doesn't happen on area transitions is because you technically run into a wall or something, and then it's also a loading zone. Or like it force closes the map rather than tries to change Mega Man's position.
I would agree with you that area transitions are a wall.
Yeah, it probably operates just the same because you can slip run into an area, right?
Oh, I guess cutscenes also.
Yeah.
So that makes it. It probably just works the same as a cutscene trigger, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it goes into... It actually doesn't work the same because it goes into like an area change state. So it's a little different, but...
The Diveman fight is exactly the same as it was in Gregor, except we have a better folder and no super armor. So you're going to notice me very specifically trying to dodge away from and around torpedoes, and there I just jumped into one, and so I get punished for it.
This fight's so bad without super armor. I feel so bad for Falzar runners.
In Gregor, we get to just stand still and eat the torpedoes.
They do like no damage. You literally can just not move ever.
Yeah.
And you just win.
Imagine having to dodge.
So, all things considered in that split, it was really good. A perfect Moonstone split. Or portion of the run. So the first half was perfect. The second half, got an encounter in ACDC, doesn't lose that much time, but it's still a little bit of time loss. And then he got an encounter in Undernet 2, which took him a long period of time. The Diveman fight could have been a bit better, and I think the Blastman fight was basically all you can expect. I don't know what much more you could go for. Overall, pretty good split, but like still some time save. Looking at last splits, he actually lost a bit of time to the previous world record, about 10 seconds.
But I'm 146 ahead of my own PB, so comparing that to the world record time means if I can just somehow keep pace, I'm going to have a whir by a minute.
Yep. That would put him on pace for a little under 216. And now we're going into the Kernel split, which has one of the most annoying, but also probably interesting fights when you compare Gregor to Falzar. Because it's the only, other than Aquaman or Spoutman, it's the only different fight.
Falzar exists too.
Okay, there's 3 fights. My bad.
Does he though?
Actually, I really like the Falzar fight, and I'm pretty sure that there are like fastest Falzar versions that we haven't discovered yet. But I'll talk about that when we get to it.
The Falzar fight's really good. It's just super easy.
I would totally believe it. You know what it like? We only realistically discovered the fastest Gregor strats like a year or 2 ago, and it was basically just because Erothaur, Terra, and I were sitting in a Discord call after something. I don't even remember what. We just...
It's probably a race or something, right?
Yeah, I think it was probably... Oh yeah, because I think some of us are streaming. But yeah, we just sat there and literally all were like talking about the Gregar fight, and then we all were separately doing the Gregar fight.
Yeah. And then I uploaded a video called Fast Gregor, and I was like, wait guys, I did it faster. And then that happened like 2 or 3 more times.
Yeah, it was like Tara had the idea of like using the rocks, and I was like, I don't know if that can really work. And we kept trying, and it's like, oh, we can't get it to work. And then no, I think I was the one who suggested using the rocks to damage boost at first, and then because I was like, oh yeah, you can manipulate the rocks. That you just need to have that type of moment with Falzar, and you just get an incredibly fast Falzar fight.
Yeah, so the problem is we can't manipulate Falzar's movement, and to my knowledge at least, and it's literally just if he moves to the area you're standing in and react fast enough, you can skip cycles.
Yeah. It's different kind of RNG. Like, the Gregar fight RNG is pretty much, did you draw M-Boomer? And
what attack these?
Yeah, did you win a 50-50 on him using the proper attack?
So
I feel like for Falzar, you'd want to cut out like an intangible cycle when he goes up in the air.
yes,
And
that's
how
the
you
goal.
would save time.
Um,
Falzar does not have multiple hitboxes, but it turns out Aqua Typhoon does like really, really big damage.
Almost as much as 2 hitboxes of Heat Beast.
Yeah.
and we can use it really
Pretty
fast.
good damage.
Yeah, you can get damage boosted out of it because you don't have super armor. One of
Oh,
the benefits...
And it doesn't cause iframes, so you can double hit Falzar every cycle.
It's
a good fight. So yeah, the key is I think if you get lucky and Falzar does his 2 slower attacks in his first, so Falzar goes, we're talking about this way ahead of time, but we don't need to watch me Spoutman through evil spirits. Falzar has a wind attack, which is fast, and a fire attack, which is slow. And if he does double fire attacks at the start, you can actually switch to F Beast or Aqua Beast and get your first charge shot off before he's done. And that's a way to make a bunch of progress in terms of skipping his second intangible. And otherwise, if you're predicting his movement or using busters appropriately, you can also make enough progress to skip past it.
I bet he has an AI thing to choose between those.
What if
Because
it's
of like the way that the wind tunnel hits.
What if it's a strict 50-50?
Does the wind
Doubt it.
No, can the wind tunnel, is that always from the middle, or can he go
Nope,
to any
it can be
corner
top and bottom
or
too.
anywhere? Alright, probably not then. It's probably 50-50. It's fire and lightning.
Yep. Imagine thinking
But
they're
yeah,
gonna make
when
the
he does
bosses
that fire
too-
attack, it's so good.
Yeah, imagine
Just
thinking
stays there
Capcom would
forever.
make that fight too unique between the 2 versions.
I mean, you say that, but F-Beast exists. So.
They put all their effort into making those 2 fights different.
Well, it's more like they put all their effort into making F-Beast do things, and then G-Beast just doesn't do things instead.
I'm pretty sure they must have developed Falzar first,
I
would
just
Probably.
based on the way the game goes.
I would totally believe it.
And then they just copy and pasted the boss at BN2 when they needed a different final boss.
Is all of Falzar's hits counter hittable? Or not Falzar, F Beast.
Yes. Except he also does the stun slash when he gets low on health, and I don't know if that is.
If that's counter hittable, I'm upset.
That's a very good point. You should be if that's counter hittable.
That just means Capcom's so lazy. If it's not counter hittable.
Speaking of Capcom being lazy, we have a wonderfully sized audience. So, fun fact for chat, Proto Man's sword is on his right side, unless you're walking left, and then it's on his left side, as in his right arm or his left arm, because they just copied the sprite and reversed it.
Yep, mirrored the sprite. Also a fun fact that is in a similar vein to that, in Star Force, some of the, Star Force 1 specifically, some of the FMians don't have sprites for certain directions, like facing certain directions. So like at the end, when they're supposed to be like facing you, the sprites look a little off. And it's because they're not facing the right way because they were too lazy to make a sprite that faced the correct way.
In fairness, you can probably just like tell the code to mirror the sprite, and then that's like less memory than having more sprite images.
I would believe it, but I don't know.
All right, talking
And
about
these games are
F-Beast.
like really big for the GPA.
F-Beast has a much more complicated pattern than G-Beast. Instead of going / electric, F-Beast goes needles / needles / boomer. And when he drops below 400 HP, he speeds that up, interjects 2 new attacks, and randomizes the pattern. So the key is, don't get him low on HP unless you can finish him off real quick, because he gets way friggin' harder. You'll notice I pause buffer to set up a counter hit, because you can always do it on his first attack. And the second attack, we can also counter hit, because it's a slash. And then this is just lethal, because Elm Trap's going to do 480, and Double Shot does 120.
That's
and we
that
manage
was a really good fight.
insanely good.
Yes.
Can't believe your
Look at the
F-Beast.
last on the cam, dude. That's Sorry, you guys can't see that, but
I can't believe your F-Beast fight went better than your G-Beast fight.
I agree.
I mean,
It's
like,
such
you
a hard
say
fight.
that, but also sometimes GB's just dies to 2 chips, so...
He does, but the thing is that Last absolutely butchered that fight in his PB.
It's fine. So, if that fight ends up going long enough, you can actually, because he comes to the front a bunch, you can use Aqua Typhoon on him there. Luckily, he had tons of null chips, so it didn't really matter.
Yeah, you can theoretically AI loop him in Falzar, but it's just not as good. Like I think you can do it with what's it called? With just Aqua Cross.
You can. It's
That's
just
slow as heck.
slow
though.
and
Yeah.
way harder.
Because it's hard because timing. Your charge.
Yeah,
is just,
Aqua's Buster is hit scan and hits for 1 frame. So if you do it too early, you miss.
Yep.
Whereas like he cross stays out for literally forever, and then Elec also has like a pretty decent window.
Mm-hmm.
Elec actually makes it super easy and free to do the AI loop. It's
Yeah, because you don't even have
really
the end
fun.
lag. But also, like, Aqua doesn't want to do it, or Spout, excuse me, because 70 versus 130 damage is just bad.
So just to put in perspective how good that F-Beast fight was, I saved a minute on world record in that split.
Mm-hmm. How much time did you save on your Gregar PB? If you know.
Oh, geez. Okay, that's a good question. That was a 907 kernel, and
Oh
my
God,
Gregor
you
PB is a
That's
955.
like pretty fast.
You saved like 50 seconds. I know what your Gregor PB's time was.
My Gregor Gold is actually only 6 seconds faster than that, although my Gregor Gold isn't perfect yet.
Yeah.
I bet Risch's Gregar Gold is way faster because every other run he deletes G-Beast and 2 chips.
I've talked about this a number of times. The only time I do the God G-Beast fight is on marathon runs. So I've never gotten it in my live splits, so my gold is inaccurate.
It's good.
Oh, you
Alright,
don't
so
run splits during marathon?
No.
under BBS is so scary, and I came up with this really clever strat to use Elm Trap here to take no damage, where you dance back and forth and it times perfectly. We want to take no damage because we're going to take a minimum of 300 damage in the last fight, and we don't have Undershirt. We only have 580 HP. So this is the hardest part in the game. Definitely all these fights can be really tricky, except like the first one.
Yeah, and that fight was insane. I will say, insanely slow. But compared to dying, not bad.
Yeah. Also, if you try
you
and...
got the counter hit there too.
The second fight you can't beast out on because you need to save charges,
Yeah.
and that's the one that I've chosen to skip, and Spout crossing that is super slow also, and you can take damage if you screw things up. Fortunately,
This-
the counter hit lets me use M Boomer here.
That's so crazy. With the counter hit.
Last popping off on face cam.
And this is a really fun fight because you copy one of the Quakers, and then you face tank everything. Although I guess I didn't, which was dumb. It would have been faster too. And as mentioned, I took 340 damage there.
That fight is so tough when you don't have access to heat cross.
Yep.
Because you
Yeah,
can only
heat
hit
cross-
2 enemies at a time.
Having heat crosses damage is just really, really strong.
Yep.
You kill them in 2 charge shots, like,
Yeah, every single enemy there dies to 2 charge shots.
Yeah. And FB's charges, or not FB, sorry. Aquacross charges faster, but they spend so much time in the air, the faster charge doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Which feels really bad.
Yep. Alright, so. Coming up, one last little bit of RNG. Will last get an encounter in ACDC. There's also draw RNG, but
Yep. One last thing to point out about under BBS, the fight that I skipped with End Boomer counter hit, those bees will slaughter you. They do like 300 damage. If you try to charge shot them with F-Beast, you jump into the bees, which doesn't counter hit you, but does a ton of damage, and then out of nowhere you're at 200 HP and die to the last fight. Which is actually how my run before this run ended, was I took too much damage on the bees and died to that Quaker fight.
sounds about right. One thing you can do on that fight is you will still have to face tank the old stove fight or damage, but if you draw like a crack out, you can prevent the Quaker damage.
Actually, you don't even need to draw the crack out. The old stove cracks the panels for you. So if
Yeah.
you step forward and then backwards, you can leave a crack behind. But
Mhm.
that's not something you think of when you have 100 HP and are panicking.
I mean, I think even 100 HP will straight up, the
Oh,
old
yeah,
stove will
yeah.
straight up kill you. I think that's exactly how much he does, or it's like 140 or something.
I'll note for anybody who wants to pick this game up, if you're a new runner and aren't as confident in those fights, you can definitely buy full energies when you're buying the last 2 sneak runs as Spoutman back in the kernel split and use them there, and it would be totally respected.
Yeah, no one would say anything. People still do it in Gregar every now and then. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
In
Unless
fact, I would
you're...
encourage it.
Yeah, it's like the only time you should consider not doing that is if you're grinding for an insanely good time. But at that point, like, you need to put the practice in to be good enough at those fights.
This is a really fantastic final day split overall. The fights went pretty well. We could have gone slightly faster in some of them, but we ended up beating world record by another, or the previous world record by another 45 seconds there. So 2 minutes ahead of the previous world record at this point.
Full 2 minutes over, I believe, like a low 217. And 2.5 ahead of a like high 217. So it's looking like it's going to be around the 215 mark.
Assuming we don't die to a nightmare.
that'd be a really good world record review.
That would also be another good one, actually. Just troll everyone with a run that just died.
Gregar world record review. Did we get the sub-10? Dies to Gregar.
Dies to Gregor would be good, Circus Man would be good, even Judge Man. Just fail gavel skip a couple times and die to Judge Man.
Dude, I could set up a... I could like record like a task
I was gonna say just do like a semi task. It works
that
out
like
perfectly.
looks really legit and then gets to Gregar but dies. Or like dies to the particularly bad nightmare encounter or something.
Man. So much potential for an April Fool's joke.
Then I turn on the movie thing, and it's like, hot, just a prank. This was planned all along.
Chet, you know that this won't ever happen though, so you don't have to worry about it because it involved Erothaur and tassing something.
It involved
Hey.
Erothaur putting in effort.
It would be like a lazy task. I don't have time to do that with class. But
Actually, screw up the slipwalk there, which means there's a chance. First off, we have to go slower because we have to go pick up this other one, and there's going to be a chance at an encounter later.
hey, it's 1700 Zenny. Now you can buy the extra sneak run.
Beautiful.
Also, I start panicking, and it takes me a little while to calm down because that's a mistake that is scary, but only slightly, and running into a wall would be much worse.
I thought you did run into a wall just there too.
Same.
I wish there was a way to see like where the sharks were. Like the sharks that are off screen at least.
Yeah, I do attempt to use your setup.
Yeah, I'm sure it didn't go well because I've not been getting it as consistently as I used to. I think it's like a perfect timing thing.
I wonder if there's an easy way to like mod the camera to be way zoomed out and fixed, so we can look at the sharks.
I wonder. Because like you have to know that the sharks are moving off screen.
Yeah, like the whole map's loaded anyway. Theoretically, we could do it.
Yeah, like I think you waited too long there. I don't know if that's actually too long, but that's definitely longer than I would have waited, so.
My strategy is to just be ahead of it.
So what we're discussing is that blue shark that was in my way, and so I had to go around the long way of that last loop.
Yeah.
Yep.
There may be a way to manipulate it to not be there, but we're not sure what the movement would be yet.
I've,
Also, I celebrate because we didn't get the random encounter that we probably should have gotten, so...
I've been able to be ahead of it, have it not be there, and get caught by it all with like very similar movement. So
It's just ideal if the shark isn't there completely. You just don't have to worry about it.
that would be nice, yeah. Especially since like we have a lot of time to just stand wherever to try to manipulate it.
Yep. And getting caught by the shark while trying to do something really tight would be disastrous.
After the panic, that was the opening of Pivotal 1. Honestly, Gavel Skip feels like a walk in the park.
Gavel skip's free, friendly reminder. I'm surprised that you actually did it, considering you were considering not doing it in your Greg RPB.
I didn't want Risch to come beat me up.
Coward! A little bit of an unfortunate draw. Only 2 chargeable chips.
Gavel skip looks pretty fun. It's really cool. Fun's not the word.
Grinding it is fun. Using it in a run is not.
No, it's.
I think we can all agree on that.
It's not fun.
It's like I'd still rather do gavel skip than barking skip, but
Also true.
Yeah,
and
so
they save like the same amount of time.
they save 1 encounter.
In fact, a lurking skip might save more time.
Mm-hmm. Listen, my threats are empty, okay?
Yeah,
Let's just
but
put it that
then
way.
they'd like play video games and eat pancakes or something. So it seems cooler.
True. True.
Risch wouldn't like my pancakes. I put protein powder in
I mean, it depends how much I can taste it.
Just don't tell
I
them.
was gonna say, if you don't tell me and I don't taste it, like...
Oh, okay.
In that case, forget it.
Alright, unfortunately, this
said
is a
nothing.
super early encounter, And it's got a bunch of planes, and reminder, planes suck. Also, the mech guys suck too, because you also can't slash them.
That fight was terrifying until I saw the Elm Trap draw.
Yep.
Oh, see, in my mind, I was like, this is fine, and then I remembered we were playing Falzar and couldn't kill them.
That was almost exactly my thought process in the game. I was like, oh, there's no hole, everything's fine. And then I saw the fight and was like, oh, actually this fight sucks.
Yeah.
And then I drew the Elm Trap. Okay.
That fight looked terrifying. I was like, how do you deal with this fight in Falzar? Oh, you just draw Elm Trap. Okay. Fun fact, those dark mech viruses only appear in this comp. In the US version. They don't exist in this particular comp. In the Japanese
so
version.
the Japanese version had more maps to work with. So when they ported the game to the US version, they decided they didn't need some of those maps for some reason. And they had to put all the viruses somewhere. So most areas have, I think it's like 9 or 12 different encounters. This area just has like a lot. And that's because this is one of the areas that they just crammed a bunch of extra encounters into. In fact, I can tell you exactly how many encounters are in this comp. I think. This is what, Pavilion
Troll.
2?
Jeez, that's so much damage.
For the record, he was actually going to troll me at 1 HP, but because there's no end lag on that, I just held the B button and shot him once.
Yep. And now for 3 more forced fights and then 2 bosses, which obviously are all going to be different, but at least Circus Man will be pretty similar to something you've already seen. These fights will be interesting, although this fight is basically identical to what we should be doing in Gregor nowadays.
Yes. So the only scary fight here is the third one, because we haven't fought sandworms yet, and sandworms are scarier than most of the other things we've put together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, actually, Pavilion 3 is not that bad. It only has 16 encounters, and the Japanese version has 12. So they only added like 2 viruses or something. Unfortunately, there are more encounters in English that have nightmares than in Japanese. English version has a 25% chance to get a nightmare.
Versus 16.67 if I recall.
This is a strat I had just recently developed that's really clean. Just abuses the fact that we're a water element to take no damage and very fast.
No, yeah, that's definitely pretty fast. The only difference there is that we like use 2 charges with end lag, of course, in Gregor, and we take 100 damage to damage boost the end lag.
I was trying to figure out a way to make the damage boost work in Falzar, and it's just slower too, because you gotta copy the Metar. It has the most HP. It takes 3 charges to kill the Metar, and only 2 or 1 for the other guys because they're fire element.
Yep.
And Elm Trap is just such an easy way to solve this fight. It's not the fastest way. You can do clever things with FB's transformations, but they're terrifying. So.
Yep. So those fights went pretty cleanly. Now we get to see Circus Man EX. It's just Circus Man again with more health. And we're going to take, looks like 2 turns. You always have to take at least 2 turns, assuming you get a 3 chip draw next turn, hopefully.
We almost always do.
It's a bit scary because you know 1 chip isn't, and you can technically get alphabet souped a little bit.
Yes. But this is like why we buy those Recuv 30 stars.
Yep.
For fights like this, be more consistent. Oh, I forgot about that.
And
then I
you
didn't
take
take
a chip. 10 to
But that cage
twice.
would have killed me, by the way.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of damage. And there we go. On to the final boss, which we discussed a little bit earlier.
So Falzar has a pattern. He's going to use either a fire or a wind attack, then he's going to use a fire or a wind attack, and then he's going to use a needle attack. And when he's not using the needle attack, we can be hurting him. But while the needles are going, he's invulnerable. So the goal is just to try and get him dead in 5 attacks if we can, and otherwise 8 or less, so that we can avoid that third intangible. The thing is, we're face tanking a lot, and so the key you want early on more than everything else is not to take damage when you're not yet aqua beasted. Of course, I have
immediately failed that advice. Four chip draw, pretty good. So now I assume he's going to be intangible.
And because we charge our attacks so fast, we can waste these shots bustering. Right there, you saw how he was actually sitting in front of me. That's where I think we could skip a cycle to get like a fastest Falzar. He did it again there. I didn't have an opportunity to take advantage.
And then basically just need one more charge. And with that, time. So I'm going to wait a little bit so you can see the actual time, which is a 2:15:18. 0.84.
Ended up losing 15 seconds to my previous run's Falzar, but saved 2 seconds on Whir. Or old Whir at this point.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. So I think that really is, and like I said at the beginning, the first Falzar run that showcases what modern Falzar looks like. It's got Falzar specific approaches to every aspect of the game, whether it's going through and changing when we're doing the edits and what we're regging to strategies specific for every virus battle and boss battle. It's not perfectly executed, and there were definitely places where you could get better RNG, but it had pretty solid RNG, especially in the mid game. And I think there's nowhere to go for Falzar but up.
No, yeah, like looking at this run, there's definitely time save in a lot of places, especially early on. Some of the mid splits are also bad. It's just like the end game is really good. Obviously, MMBN split still has some time save, even though like looking at last split is a gold. Kernel split was incredibly good. Final day split was pretty decent. But yeah, it's just like looking at the splits, there's definitely time save. And as last mentioned, I think within 2 to 3 minutes of Falzar or of Gregor is like a good goal. Considering most of the time loss should basically just be the Aquaman split.
Realistically, I think I would give him more like about 5. I see Falzar going to like 212, 213.
Yeah, I would say that I think a 213 Falzar is easier than a 210 Gregor, which is easier than a 212 Falzar, would be my current guess.
Yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable.
There you have it. That is the current Battle Network 6 Cybeast Falzar world record in 2:15:18 by TheLastAaoa. So, I think that's basically all we really were planning to show off for today. So, last, any closing comments on this run?
We need to. I'm really excited. This is my first time having both records simultaneously, which is super hype. I think there's only 3 people who have ever had that. Erothaur, Address, and myself. I might be misremembering. But it's awesome. And I'm now I am at peace, and Risch, feel free to bot me and Gregor whenever.
We're working on it. Pausing it there for the in-game time of a 2:12. Okay. Erothaur, got any closing statements for this analysis?
Nope. I think I said what I was thinking. I was pretty cool to get to watch the full run though, because I missed a bunch when you streamed it. So that was cool. I didn't get to see the element or the kernel split. That was impressive.
Kernel split was really good. Probably the best part of this whole run, which is a big change from your Craig RPB.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Imagine.
So I think that should do it for us here. Tara, have any closing comments before we wrap up the stream?
Good job, Last. Good run. Thanks for sharing and commentating. Thank you, Risch, for hosting, and Erothaur for the commentary. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And we hope to see you in the next TeamBN stream or video.